Boom. All right. What's up, everybody? Joshua Smith here with another GSD mode podcast with my good friend, Ben Barber. What's up, Ben?
What's up, Josh? How you doing, bud?
Good, dude. How are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. It's good to see you. I love The Office.
Yeah,
I love
I
to
do.
see how that's come together.
Yeah, it's I'll have to do a video one of these days. Now it's fully done. The lighting in here still, I gotta figure out camera lighting setup, but it's yeah, the remodel, dude. It was one of these things that was supposed to be a 3-week remodel, turned like 9 months. Some of that was changes I made, but dude, we started off on this kind of right before the supply chain issues really started halting, and it just it was tough, dude. And more so than materials, which that did delay, like to get desk built, dude. Everything was on back order. No things that, because you've been down here, you've seen all the custom desks I had built and created. But normally, I was talking to the builder of them, and things that would take, normally 6 weeks now took 6 months, right? And some of that was shortage on materials. A lot of it was just due to, whether it was COVID shutdowns or just a lack of staff. And then that's the biggest issue, especially towards the end, that when we were painting, like we went through like 7 painters, dude. I was talking to my GC and he was like, dude, painters I used to pay, $18-20 an hour, now are demanding 38 out here, and because you got like
the builders, were they going to the builders? Or I know you had a ton of like new businesses come to the area and you're building a lot of infrastructure there. Is it that, or is it residential?
Yeah, I mean, it's all of it, dude. So it's residential and commercial, but like as an example, like right up the street here, Taiwan Semiconductor Company, because you know how China's claiming stakes in Taiwan and all those tensions. Well, Taiwan's moved all their semiconductor plants to the States and, landed on building them here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's a $20 billion facility that they're building up the street. So you can just imagine how many workers that pulls and demands on the commercial side. So, not all of the stuff that I needed that was commercial, but like I couldn't get a residential electrician in here. I had to have for commercial, you have to have commercial. Well, to the point where I couldn't get anywhere. Like I fucking had to learn how to change my own ballast and lights and how to do all that shit myself. Dude, it was just, but it turned out good, man. I'm really happy with it, man. So how things in Utah, man? How's your market?
It's good, man. The market is good. We're cold here. It's funny because we always kind of seem to be regulated by that temperature. And when we go through cold fronts, we do see a significant slowdown. But our market has been really interesting in that I really like that we're kind of behind the time. So we're definitely not as big as your area. But back in 2008, when the market crashed, it was nice because we were 2 years behind the bigger markets, just because we just don't have the inventory. We don't typically have big price increases that get out of hand. So what we've seen here is we have seen that supply has picked up, demand has tapered off a little bit in the outlying areas. Salt Lake City plus 5 miles in radius, we're still seeing a lot of competition for homes, some people bidding over asking price, but our appraisers aren't supporting any of those ridiculous values. And we're seeing, like for the first time, our inventory is starting to stack back up, which is good. I mean, it's still super low and we're still in a super decline as far as what we need for housing. And we're seeing a lot more townhouses built like that. We're not known for having townhouses, but if you look around at all the construction, we're seeing a lot of townhouses and we're seeing a lot of utilization of space in areas that most people wouldn't, like right up against train tracks. We have a new big freeway going in the North Davis corridor that's going to make it easier to access northern Utah, which is where I'm at, but it's all built over marshland. And we get nasty mosquitoes in the summertime, a lot of flooding issues. I've had houses that we've had to put on stilts, which is weird to think stilts in Utah, just trying to get down to the bedrock. But we're building huge communities out right up against this North Davis corridor because that's the only where we can go for land is places where the Great Salt Lake has evaporated, basically where it's dried up. So time will tell on those, but our market's doing really well. I like seeing that it's coming back down and that we're not having such competition for it because I think buyers were making some poor decisions and the wrong agent is going to steer a buyer to make a poor decision because now they start, like we've talked about this before. I always try to avoid speculating with people. I can tell them historically what we've done, but in our market, we were rated, I want to say it was the New York Times that came out with the top 10 overvalued markets. All 3 of our major markets were on that top 10 list. Yeah. So we had, Provo down there where all the tech companies are coming, Salt Lake and Ogden were all overvalued. We went up 19% across the board last year. And the year before that was like 12%. And we just can't keep maintaining that because we're outpricing the first-time home buyer. So we're seeing a lot more multi-generational families as buyers, where we've got mom and dad living there with their kids that are in college or are expecting. But I mean, so all that in a roundabout way to say it's still good. It's slowing down a little bit in certain areas, but it's been pretty consistent with what it's been the last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Really, we've been in the seller's market for 6 years now. So
yeah. It's crazy. It's like, I'm always talking to real estate agents on my team, or just, whatever, through the podcast or, my coaching clients and so forth. And I'm like, look, man, if you haven't been in the market, like really pre 2012, you haven't experienced a normal market. It's crazy to think about, but it's, we just potentially coming out of, the largest bull run in recorded history. And what's interesting about these times, much more so than even 2008, when the GFC or the housing market crashes, is, realtors will know it as, like right now we're in this huge, massive everything bubble. Like every asset class is so inflated. It's so nuts, dude. Yeah. But for those that are maybe watching and listening, dude, that don't know you, that haven't, I know you've been on a bunch of times in the past, but maybe they're just tuning into this podcast. Yeah. You've been in the market, I mean, previous to getting into becoming a realtor and a team leader now today in Salt Lake Metro, let's just say, Utah, you were in the REO world, asset manager, made that pivot into real estate. But how long have you been selling real estate and now running your team in the Salt Lake area?
6 years now. I've been running the team for 6 years. And yeah, prior to that, how much information you want on that? Because I've been a team leader for 6 years, and prior to that, REO for 7 years. Did I ever tell you that I'm almost like the life cycle of this whole thing? Because I worked for Credit Suisse as one of their operations managers right before the crash, and we rolled out one of the no-doc programs that I think really started sinking the ship. And the first time I saw it, we were at 95% no-doc. So for people who don't know, a no-doc loan back in the day, that is a total, like, all you need is your name and social security card. It is not looking at any assets, no ink, like it's nothing. It's just your name and you're signing. And we were going 95% loan to value with a 620 score, a 600 score, one trade line established for 12 months for $1,000 high limit. And when I saw that, I was like, dude, these people, that's not any kind of credit worthiness. And then sure enough, that was like 2007. And then the market started crashing because of those bad loans. And then I went to REO for 7 years. I loved REO. I still miss REO. Like I really did. I complained about it a lot while I was there because evictions wears on you after a while. I did that for 2 years, managing the eviction department, and that wears on you. But I loved it. I've loved being a team lead here and in Salt Lake, my market. So I think it could be really good for people. Like I would love to be in your market where it's a lot more densely populated, but in mine, like it's not unusual for me to drive 60 miles for a showing, for a buyer presentation or a listing presentation, because with our inventory, that's really what we have to do, is we have to travel because we're so spread out, and we've just made the most of it. And so for me, I came into it, and my expertise and being successful was really understanding Facebook and understanding trends and how do I generate business instead of just counting on my sphere. I saw that's what a lot of agents were doing, is they were saying, I'm going to be an agent. All my best friends are going to work with me. My family's going to work with me. And I said, well, I actually stole this from you. So I'm not, this is totally paraphrasing you, but the first time I ever heard the stat about how many people know a real estate agent was listening to one of your podcasts. You were like, dude, they know 11 or 12 people. And so I came into the market and saying, I'm not going to put my friends and my family in that situation where I could destroy a relationship if they know that many agents. So I'm just going to go get business somewhere else. And it's been really helpful. We started out with Realtor.com, closing about $10 million a year, and then transitioned off of that to where we were basically self-sustained with Facebook leads, online marketing, mega open houses, things like that. And now I don't do as much volume. Like my team isn't super big, but just between me and Kim, we do probably 20, 30 million a year, just between the two of us. And then my team averages 5 to 8 million per person.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge, dude. I mean, those are massive numbers, dude. So, then, before we get into just some of the things that you guys are doing and pivoting for business, I want to kind of stick on the market itself. My goal, I took a little pause with the remodel, and then I just decided after remodeling, when I was like, dude, I just need a technology kind of pause for myself. So,
Yeah.
I went last couple months, dude, with, not checking my phone, not like, just like no tech other than the minimum I needed to do the work I needed to do. Which was an awesome cleanse, dude. I gotta tell you, it was amazing.
Did
But as
you
I'm
ever
picking this
get
back,
your old phone?
what's that?
Did you ever switch your phone? Like
No,
you were
so
talking
I
at one
went to
point
a
about
flip
just getting the
phone
old flip.
I went to a flip phone for 6 months. And the only reason I went back to the iPhone was my daughter got her first phone, and now she starts texting me. I'm like, oh, like I wanted to be able to text my daughter, and I couldn't text on there. But then now, dude, like this just happened last couple of months. Like she's at that age where it's no longer cool to text dad, So I'm like, fuck it, I'm going back to it. So I'm actually getting ready to pull it. I mean, if you look at my phone, dude, like I have no apps on here other than like the minimum. Like there's no social media, there's no, it's essentially for me to do the business I have to do. But I'll throw that thing in a drawer, not touch it for 3 days at a time. I truly believe that smartphones are making us dumb, dude. I'm not a fan of them at all, from a lot of different fronts, but I won't go down that rabbit hole today. But as I'm really launching the podcast, I'm like, man, I mean, the question I get every day is from agents is what's going on, not just agents, but family members, friends, what's going on with the market, real estate market, as well as all markets, like what's going on with the economy. I mean, a lot of people are, you're seeing the stats on TV, you've seen them on the news, but like people don't feel right. Like they're like, dude, like this is a house of cards kind of a feeling. So I'm just going to do in a series where I'm going to go around and interview top producers all throughout the country of what's going on in their market and what are their predictions of where this thing goes. Okay, so you said you saw like 11% uptick, 11 or 12% uptick, and that would have been 2019. Or no, 2020.
2020, and then we were 19% across the board in 2021.
Okay. Yep. And so as of right now, you guys, we're January 21st, 2022 as we're recording this.
Dude, we were 9% in 2019. So we were 9%, then 11%, then 19% in the last 3 years.
Yeah, it's nuts, dude. And I mean, most markets are nuts. I mean, I talked to, some agents in some markets where, it's been a buyer's market. But that's so rare, dude. That's like 1 out of 100. I think 99% of the United States and I don't want to say other countries because I don't have as good of a pulse on the Canadian market. So I don't want to classify all North America in that, but dude, it is like none of this makes sense to me. Of what's going on. But you have, because a lot of areas like my market, we're not really seeing a slowdown in appreciation. And I mean, we did, so 2020, we had 39% appreciation. 2021, we had like 31 or 32% appreciation. So we're leading as far as a metro, we're leading the country in appreciation. But you guys are starting to see a slowdown. With that. So, I mean, is that, what do you think the main cause is to that? Is it, I heard a stat the other day, you guys can fact check this. I didn't fact check it, but I heard that mortgage applications are down 50% now nationwide. Is it just lower buyer demand? Is it buyers maybe just getting burnout of just the rat race it's been trying to find a home? Is it builders slowing down building growth, or maybe they increase build growth to kind of meet the supply and demand a little bit? Like what do you think is kind of the leading causes that's, somewhat equalizing out your market?
Yep. That's a great question. So you can't quantify anything I'm going to tell you. This is all just experience and feelings and things. So number one, I come from a conservative state where the majority of people are LDS faith, and in the LDS community, fiscal responsibility is taught. And the way that the market's been going, it's fiscally unresponsible for what some people are doing to go over and above a property value, to waive your appraisal contingency, waive inspection contingencies, all these things. So people feel like they're overpaying for a property. And we're seeing that a lot of people are worried about, yes, I can sell. So we're seeing a lot of people sell and then transition into a rental or staying with family or something, because what they think is, I'm going to sell high, but I'm not going to go buy my new house at this high price point. And it's the challenge where everybody's an expert, but I think that they're looking at it and they have the same question that I have, which is, how long can you sustain that growth? And that's not even in an area like yours where you're hitting those 30% increases. But we look at it and we say, how how much can this 1,200 square foot home truly appreciate before we've hit the cap and there's nothing else there? And so we're seeing buyers pull out for that aspect where they feel like they're overpaying for properties and not getting the value. And they're concerned that they're not going to find a replacement property or an improved property for the right value. They feel like they're going to go, yes, I'm going to make a lot of money on my sale, but I'm going to overpay for this property here. We're also seeing that just buyer burnout. Like that's the number one challenge with our pipeline is buyer burnout. When they go out, and it was bad 3-4 years ago when we would write 6 or 7 offers before we get something under contract. And now it's to the point where we're getting to, before it started cooling down, we couldn't even schedule a show. Like we'd schedule a showing, and on the way to the showing, we get confirmation they've already accepted an offer and it's under contract. And that despair starts building into people because you just think, how am I going to win? Especially when we were coming financed offers, and all of a sudden this cash comes out, and I don't think people realize that Utah's as cash heavy as it is, where we've had something like 35% of our transactions last year were all cash buyers. And people don't realize that there's that kind of wealth here. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people were being beat out by that wealth, and that's just discouraging. So we have that. I mean, the holidays always turns it down. It always slows down for us December, January, February, and then starts picking up in March. But that's what we saw. We just saw buyer burnout and people not wanting to compete with these other buyers. Like we have, there's actually a great, you have Homie in your market, we have Homie in our market, and they're starting to spread all over. And that's a totally different conversation. But when I look at Homie, basically feeds the fear of the market. And right now their big advertising campaign is want to make $100,000 quick, sell your property to a Californian. And that's what we think. Everybody's moving from California. They're overpaying for our properties. I can't compete with them. I'm just going to stay out of it. Like, I really think that's it. I think it's buyer exhaustion and fatigue.
Now, do you guys have a lot of these institutional buyers and investors investing in your market, or is it mainly kind of just families buying homes for themselves?
We are seeing more and more institutions come in. So, we do a ton of business with Home Partners. Trio's also in our area. But we've actually sold a couple of our listings to buy and hold investment companies that aren't coming in like Open Door. Like it's not a strategy where you're coming in and trying to buy the property 23% below value after you account for repairs and fees and costs and all that stuff. They're actually coming in at or above list price, allowing the sellers to lease the property back and then holding on to it as a long-term rental. So we're seeing that quite a bit. Like I see a new one pop up constantly. And I think that's going to be the model that we're going to see, because right now, everybody just wants to buy the properties. It's been, it's a safe, I don't know what their models are. I don't know how they're calculating, but I know just from our experience with Home Partners, where now you have Blackstone involved, and they came in and they purchased them, and they basically put out the mandate that they want to be to the point where they're purchasing 2,000 properties per metro. Like they're coming in incredibly heavy, and you have a ton of other companies that nobody even knows about that are doing the exact same thing. They're coming in, they're just buying up all the property, enjoying the appreciation if it's there, but if not, they're going to cash flow on the rent. It's a good model.
Yeah. It's we're seeing that nationwide. And I don't want to say, when I say nationwide, the other day I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine who is in Southern Indiana, more of a rural market, and they're not seeing the institutional buyers there, but in major metros, it is, nationwide, it's about 25%, 1 out of 4 homes is bought by an investor, and the vast majority of those are institutional investors, and they have direct accounts to the Fed, dude. So they're getting interest rates that they're essentially, we'll see what happens with interest rates here, but they're getting free money to go out there and purchase these assets, or when I say free money, interest-free money doesn't mean that they still don't have expenses tied to those properties,
sure.
But they're able to play that long game in a way that the average investor, just the average person, can't play. They can play that 40, 50 year long game. And to be honest with you, man, the more that of what I see what's going on, I don't know if you hear this term, the Great Reset. And I'd hear that term over the last few years. I kept hearing this Great Reset. I just dismissed it as a conspiracy theory bullshit, and then I come across, Klaus Schwab's book, The Great Reset. Now, Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum. He actually published the Great Reset agenda. And when you start looking at, okay, well, who's a part of the World Economic Forum? It's all the big players, dude. It's BlackRock. It's all the big institutions. It's, all the big foundations, all the big pharmaceutical companies, all the big, right. You also all public data knowledge, but, in that, they have this, that's where you see some people go out there. And again, this was shit 2 years ago, I'd be like, that's just bullshit, conspiracy theory, but this whole like, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. Well, no, dude, like it's all part of, now, when I say the World Economic Forum, and they're actually meeting and, they have their annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland, which is going on right now. And you can watch all their videos and cause it's all video recorded right now. So I'm the geek that will go watch every one of those videos. And now they come across as suggestions, but I've the more and more that I learn and the more history that I'm studying with the World Economic Forum, the more that I'm realizing that these suggestions are highly followed,
right.
If you will. So it gets me going down that mindset though of, because dude, if this continues, so like a company that, you guys do a lot of business with, that we do a lot of business with here, Blackstone through Home Partners of America, it's like, dude, they're swallowing up so much property. In my market, man, it makes it like when Zillow was buying, we heard on the media that the media kind of gave Zillow a bad name in that, their algorithm was off. They were buying off the Zestimates and the Zestimates were off. And that's why they got in trouble. I'm like, bullshit. It wasn't that their Zestimates were off. Yeah. It was that, dude, they were coming in paying way above anything their estimate. They like, it wasn't that they were just coming in paying cash and our buyers that were coming in with financing couldn't compete. They were coming in 50 grand above, dude. Right. And not all cases, but in a lot of cases. Right. So it just made it where they just shut down the rest of the market. And I don't want to make Zillow to be the bad guy here, because it's all of them. It's all these huge institutions, dude. It's Open Door, it's OfferPad, it's Blackstone, it's BlackRock, it's the laundry list of these other institutions that essentially BlackRock and Vanguard are the major shareholders in all of them. But it makes me think that, dude, of well, why are they swallowing up all of these? Well, it's and who knows? I don't want to say that this could be the going down the rabbit hole of, them intentionally trying to get us to become a renter society, or maybe they just understand or know that, population growth continues. We're going to continue having a shortage of households, and they just see this as a great long-term play. It could be that too. I don't have the answers for sure. I was telling you before we hit the record button, the more that I learn, the more confused I am.
Yeah. But it could be both. They could both be operating with the same outcome of acquiring the properties, but with different intentions. Because I know that, okay, so one of them that you have Trio, right? And Trio's in your area, Trio's in my area. They're going to come in, but they're an institution that's buying properties, but they're buying them with an FHA assumable mortgage. They really, their claim to fame, if they would, is like 80% of people who go through their rent purchase program actually become homeowners. But trying to get a Trio property approved is very difficult because of the requirements they have to acquire it. Dude, Home Partners doesn't have that requirement. It's here's our cash offer. We don't need the seller to give us any kind of kickback. We don't need the house to be priced above or below. We don't need any of that. We're just going to pay what we think the home is worth. But they have a lower success rate of people actually becoming homeowners at the end of that lease term. But that's their play. Their play is the long-term buy and hold and then liquidate if they need to. That's their play. Zillow didn't really have a plan, right? Like theirs was mainly buy it, anticipate market appreciation. I don't think, were they renting them? We don't like, we're the last to the party when it comes to Open Door and OfferPad and things like that. So I don't.
Yeah, my market's the opposite years. We're the testing ground.
You are the testing ground.
Yeah. So most of them were flips. It was the iBuyer, Open Door model. But then from there, and again, it gets me going down some rabbit holes here. But then if you look at a lot of the institutions that acquired, those properties that they had to, fire sale, they're the same shareholders that are majority shareholders inside Zillow itself, right? So, who knows what that was. But, I look at this of, when you look at, what's going on with the stock market, the bond market, when you look at all the different markets out there, we have these crazy valuations. Let's just speak to the stock market right now. You have companies out there that are yet to come to market to sell a product that have $1 billion caps. You got companies like Open Door that I don't know what their net loss was in 2021, but in 2020, it was like 84 million of a net loss. And in 2021, I believe it was on track to be, even greater than that. And I could be wrong on that. I'll have to research their market caps. I wasn't planning on bringing this up in this podcast. Otherwise I would have come with that data. But when you look at last time I checked, They had like a $10 billion market cap. Okay, you got a company that's never made a cent, that's losing 80 some million a year. How is it fucking possible they have a $10 billion market cap? But if indeed the stock market does crash, the bond market crashes, it's going to go back to the fundamentals, so I don't know. So Zillow may have just, wised up and said, okay, we got to get out of this game because we got this unprofitable sector of our business, and we need to get back to the fundamentals. Because if you look at the businesses that last and investors that last over time, decades and decades, or even some of these that are, century plus old businesses, they have this resilience to last, so it's not just about going out there and making money and doing well during good times, but it's also, what do you do to protect yourself during the bad times so you don't take a loss? And this is what we're seeing right now. I mean, if you look at the major players out there, dude, like a Michael Burry's example, who I know a lot of people that are watching, listen to this podcast are, real estate agents that have probably seen the movie, The Big Short. So he was Christian Bale in The Big Short that played it. But dude, I saw the other day that he sold like 94% of his portfolio, just like exited, like he's out, he's in cash, right? Well, I don't know. He always, his numbers are disclosed 90 days, past tense. But he's so you look at these players, like, what are they doing? What moves are they making? And a lot of this is just preservation, dude, to make sure that they don't get taken out, if a collapse is inevitable, which I don't know how it's not, with that being said. So, what are your predictions, dude? And when I think this is really important for anybody that's watching this, whether if you're a seasoned real estate professional, this and understand this, but maybe you're not, maybe you're new to the game, or maybe you're watching this and you're not in real estate. You're just trying to get some awareness of what's going on with the real estate market. Real estate is very hyper local. So it is not one of these things that's like, in the stock market, like, okay, Tesla stock's going to be Tesla stock, no matter whether I'm living in Phoenix, Arizona, or Salt Lake City, Utah, or New York City, it's the same shit. Where real estate, it's so hyper local, where even in 2008, there were markets that were very, either unimpacted or took a, very insignificant, decline versus markets like mine that were just demolished. Right. So when I'm speaking to and getting your predictions of where do you think this is, heading, not just 2022, but let's just say in the next 5 years, where you kind of perceive your market going, I just want people to have that understanding of, I'm asking Ben about his market, it's so difficult to make a nationwide prediction, with that, but where do you see, your market heading, dude?
That it's a great question. So I look at, because you and I talk about REO all the time, and we did our REO University, and any event that I go to, people inevitably ask me about REO, and they ask about what the market's going to do in the future. And I used to really go back and argue statistics, and I would talk about unemployment, or I'd talk about affordability or inflation, cost of living increases, things like that. And there would always be kickback until the one day that I said, you know what, you're right. Prices are going to keep increasing forever and everybody will be able to afford it. And once I said that one time, the person came back and they're like, no, they can't keep going up forever. And people couldn't be able to afford it. I was like, okay, thank you. That's the point we're making. I look at trends, but this is where I love talking to you, because you are the guy that has the stats that back it up and you do the research. And I look at trends from more like just almost a memory of the times before things just went batshit out of control. And those are the same feelings I get now, where everybody is still financing things completely through the roof. We have options now of what was it like? We have more car loans financed out like 7 years than we ever have before. Credit card debt is still climbing. So we haven't learned to be financially responsible. And I think it gives people a false sense of financial responsibility when they have appreciation in their home. And that's what I saw in 2006 and 7, because back in those days, I was on the lending side of it. And people were treating their property as a piggy bank, and they were just pulling cash out. And instead of consolidating debt, they were buying new trucks and boats and RVs. And that's what we have in our market right here, is people consolidating their debt, taking the equity out of their property to buy toys instead of, planning for the future. So I worry about that, because that's the mindset that I'm constantly going to increase in value at the same rate that I've been going. I look at, like, I'm curious to see what the impact is now that the foreclosure moratoriums are lifting. And I know I don't have any of the new data, but Q3 in 2021, foreclosures went up 68% compared to a year before, that was still handicapped by moratoriums in place. So I think those moratoriums are going to wreak a little bit of havoc on the market, but then you're going to have shadow inventory and it's going to be slow played out. I think what's happening though is in my market specifically, we're going to outpace the first-time home buyer. Properties are becoming unaffordable. We don't have the wages to support the median price. You know, we went from a median price when I started of like $215,000, and now our median price is $485,000. Like we can't sustain that. So I think we're outpricing the first-time home buyer. We're pretty good on inventory. You know, like we're building a lot, like I was telling you, but we're building townhomes. So I think those are going to go primarily to investors. I'm curious to see what they do. We have a partner that invested in a big townhouse project in Salt Lake with the anticipation of it being a long-term rental situation. And the market changed so fast that they just bought out all their partners and sold all the units as single family homes. So I think we're going to see another year maybe of really good appreciation. Demand is still really high. Supply is still low. But as the properties start being finished off and people start, I think we're outpricing everybody. And I think that affordability goes away. And the only way people are maintaining the properties, like I said, is multi-generational families in the same property. And so if you lose one of those people, you just lost the income and you may not be able to afford the property. So I think we've got another year, maybe two, before we start seeing it slow down and go back to the kind of what the historical model has been. I thought we would see a huge crash with COVID. That's what I really thought. You and I were talking about that and the market was super good. And then all of a sudden this completely unknown thing comes in and just demolishes everything. But the moratorium stopped. So we don't know what the impact of it has truly been, right? Because we had the majority was at 93% of people who own investment properties are private individuals that they still had to pay their mortgage, even though you had eviction moratoriums for renters. So we don't know the impact of that yet, because then they went through foreclosure moratoriums. I don't know. So I'm hopeful. Kim is a lot more pessimistic than I am. She thinks another year or two and prices are just going to drop like rocks. I think that we're going to see a shift in the way people look at housing, and you're going to see a lot more townhouse owners and multi-generational families or roommate situations for a long time. I think that's the only way they can go, because we're pricing ourselves out of the market.
Yeah. Yeah. In 2020, the average for age of a first-time buyer, now this is, a national level, so it's not going to be hyper local, so this might be different for everybody's markets, but was 34 years old. Now, again, because it's so early into 2022 that a lot of this data and statistics haven't come out yet. But I heard the other day, I haven't been able to fact check this yet, because again, we just don't have the data yet for 2021. But I heard the other day that it was 37 in 2021. So, but even if it's 34, if you look at from an affordability factor, that ability, and always, I don't know, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought twice about that stat. But now that I have, my oldest is, 13 years old and my youngest is 8, I'm sitting there looking at this. I'm like, dude, no longer is it that, they can go get done with school, go get a good job. Maybe they meet somebody, want to, just like my wife and I did at, 23, we bought our first house, 25, we started our family. I'm like, dude, that seems to be out of the window. And I don't think that's a healthy thing overall for society. Now this might sound morbid and twisted to anybody that's listening, but for me, I hope the market crashes, because dude, inflation is not a good thing. Now of course, there's going to be a lot of disruption. A lot of people hurt through that, whatever, but I'm like, long-term, dude, like inflation. And if you look at, there's been over 500 fiat currencies prior to the US dollar. All of them ended in the same fate, which is tyranny, and then inevitably a collapse. I'm like, inflation-based systems are not good systems. Whether you want to call it appreciation, inflation, as you mentioned, dude, trees don't grow forever, ever, otherwise they'd be touching the sun, right? So at some point, so deflation just means that you have more purchase power with your dollars. And when you start outpricing locals, it gets scary. And my market's, very similar to yours in that, do we look at the lower middle class? They're wiped out of the housing market for the most part. Even the mid kind of middle class is kind of wiped out. So it's like, dude, if you're not kind of upper middle class, or the elite, if you will, I don't know however you want to classify them, wealthy, rich, however you want to use those classifications, or an institution, that has massive amounts of liquidity to go out there and purchase these units or purchase these homes. It's like, you're out of the game, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, we sit around every single week as a real estate team and go around and we're talking about like, okay, well, what buyers are we having trouble finding properties? What are the price points? Because we're always like, when we go list a home, well, you might know that you're going to list this home 30 days because the seller's getting it ready. You might have a home for them that, is yet to hit the market. So we're always having those conversations, if you will. And, dude, like last week, it was just, I was sitting there, I'm like, I can't believe we're having these conversations. I mean, several of them, but we got to get this buyer $500,000, can't find him anything. And I'm like, what the hell, dude? My first thought is, where do people get this money? I mean, I do okay financially for myself, but I still don't understand how people get that money, that kind of money, and without, as you mentioned, leveraging themselves, to the gills. And it's crazy. But I look at this as, I believe that either way, we kind of end at the same result. So let's just say inflation continues, appreciation continues. So when you look at like what's going on right now, what a lot of people don't realize too, and I meant to bring up this point earlier, is before COVID hit. So in September 2019 was the shadow banking system collapsed. So that's the repo market. That was what led to the collapse in 2008. And it was far more significant of a collapse than we saw in 2008, to the point of 4.5 trillion in bailouts. That the Federal Reserve essentially added their balance sheet, if you will. That was pre-COVID. So then in March, we get hit with COVID, so we got about $11.2 trillion that have been created into existence from September 2019 through July 2020. So when people are seeing some of these inflation numbers that we're seeing today, and look, the inflation thing is crazy. It's one of these things. It's very complex. Because the thought from so many people is, oh, they print more money, and the more of, the more money that is in circulation, inflation's inevitable to go up. Well, money velocity hasn't increased. It's still pre-COVID, it still hasn't came up to even pre-COVID numbers when it comes to money velocity. So then is the inflation due to the increased money supply, or is the inflation, they're existing because of the supply chain issue? And it's probably a combination of both. But when I look at the supply chain issues, dude, I just see it getting worse and worse and worse. Like there is no, I don't see any fixes. And when I say that, like, I've read every page of the, now the Build Back Better plan got denied. Now they're going to try to pass, many, they're going to try to split it up and see what they can get through of that. But when I read the infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better bill, and these are, 2,000 plus page, bills, dude, I didn't see any fixes in either of those for supply chains. And then like right now, what we see with China, there's a chance that China could be our Lehman Brothers moment. Because if you look at, like, I think everybody that's listening to this has probably heard about Evergrande, filing BK, and starting to essentially collapse in China. Well, now Country Garden, which is bigger than Evergrande, just started going into default in China. So when you look at China's real estate market collapsing, which I believe that it's somewhere between 70 and 80% of those that live in China, their wealth is tied to real estate. So how does that impact their economy? But then if you just look at, okay, what are the signs that they're doing? So I'm always looking for like KPIs, like what are the signals that this could be that they're in trouble? And there's two that I'm really looking at right now is not just what's going on in China's real estate market, but with what they're doing with hoarding their commodities. So right now they're hoarding 69% of the global corn supply and about 60% between the wheat, grain, and rice supply. So now some people are like, oh, well, we don't need bread, we don't need pasta, we don't need whatever, we can get by without that. But I'm like, okay, well, what else in our life though? Like, what is eating corn that we eat? What eats what how
our livestock?
Yeah. The other day, dude, I was reading an article and I can't remember is either like 42 or 47 different countries to build this iPhone, like all the different parts, components. This is like 40 plus countries combined, through that supply chain to create this complex device, so when people, you got to pay attention to, just like the great financial crisis of 2008, that was a global crisis. Now it was led and we were the straw that broke the camel's back on it, but it impacted everybody. So for those that think that China's economy won't impact ours, I just don't know their thought process, or maybe I'm missing something that I don't
Well,
understand there.
how could it not? Because it's taken over the production of, like, when you talk about supply chain issues, yeah, that's where the majority of our products come from.
Yeah, yeah. Like, you're going to like go do an interesting experiment, go through a house and like see how many items you can find that aren't made in China.
Yeah.
But with that, like, okay, well, why are they doing that? And there might be some that are like out there to go out. Oh, maybe they want to punish other economies. No, dude, and maybe that's the case. I don't want to say no to that. But historically, when countries are doing that, that means that they're planning for their own, recession or deflationary period of time. With that, and then. And I don't know if this is still continuing into this week, but as of last week, our banking system, so you got the repo market, which is, the shadow banking system where these institutions are lending to other institutions, to keep the money supply going. And this is like, that stops, the financial system completely stops. And that's what happened in September 2019. That's what happened in 2008. Now there's a lot of things that lead up to that taking place. But when the repo market, the shadow banking system stops, then the whole system stops, right? That's like, my heart stops, like I'm fucked. Now there might be a lot of things that led to my heart stopping, so I don't want to blame it on, the end of the day, I think we all have to take responsibility in the way that we all live that, leads to all of this. Everyone wants to point the finger, but, then you got the reverse repo market, which is instead of, let's just say the Federal Reserve, funding a commercial bank, it's when the commercial banks are, going and putting their capital back with the Federal Reserve, and instead of putting it into the market. So meaning mortgages into bank, business loans and so forth. Well, to the extent of like 2 trillion a day is taking place in the reverse repo market, which, again, that signifies that the commercial banking system is planning for a recession. So when I look at all of these different things and how all these things add up, I'm just, maybe they're seeing something that we're not, who knows, but it's, like I said, either way, I think that it leads to the same thing, right? Like, meaning, okay, inflation continues and I don't see any stop to inflation. Like, let's just talk about lumber. A lot of people don't realize this, but in November, so we get the vast majority, our number one importer, or what we get our lumber from, soft lumber here, which is residential real estate, right? You can think of it that way, is from Canada. Well, in this past November, Biden doubled our tariffs. So we went from an 8.99% tariff to an 18.32% tariff. So when we're looking at, so this was just a few months ago that Biden put in those tariffs, just so it spikes up the cost of lumber that we are for building homes. Now, I'm not trying to be, this, oh, fuck Biden, this guy's not trying to, like, I don't know, maybe that's his way of encouraging, us to go out. Maybe that's his way of trying to slow down the housing market. Maybe it's, I can't get inside anybody's head. I don't know what the thought processes are for these things, but it's like, okay, cost of lumber is not coming down anytime soon. And again, supply chain, like if you look at our just the shit storm at our ports, dude, it's not, and I can promise, like, you guys go do your due diligence on this stuff. There's no fix in that. I don't want to say there's no fix in sight, but there's no proactive actions taking place currently that is solving the problem. Let's just put it that way. So when I look at that,
well, with cement too, weren't you hit with cement either? Because we got hit with cement shortages.
Oh yeah.
COVID shut all that down. And then we had the big investor or the big builders that were taking all the cement from smaller builders and halting production across the state.
Yeah. So, at some point though, it's like people are going to make a decision of, do I put food on the table guess where I'm going with all of that is I was just trying to provide some context. So it wasn't like me just pulling out of my ass of, oh, hey, I think that inflation is going to continue because I feel it's going to keep happening, right? Like I'm not a guy that I don't like to operate off of my feelings. I like to go out there and try to do my research. And this is just for me to be able to go out there and prep and to be able to better take care of, my family, my businesses and so forth, and put us in a position, to operate, right? Where it's like, okay, at some point, the average person is gonna have to make that decision, put food on the table for my kids, or do I make that mortgage payment? So whether it is, we start seeing an increase in defaults because of inflation, or the whole market collapses, housing market, stock market, bond market collapses, and puts us in there. Now, what'll be interesting is because HUD has been doing this for a lot of years. As an example, they've been packaging up their homes and selling them directly to the institutions, so they're not hitting the market. So that might be just a way of these institutions to scoop up. Like we may not be able to have it like in 2008 where we're listing these homes for Freddie, Fannie, HUD, so forth. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But either way, I see continued defaults or an increase in defaults and an increase in institution owned properties. But it could be led through appreciation. It could also be led through, whether it's inflation or deflation. I think the result ends up being the same there. That's just my hypothesis from it. But one thing I also want to point out that I don't hear a lot of people talking about is like if inflation continues, and let's just say, I think that we could all agree that 7% inflation on the CPI isn't, because you got to remember, like they don't put in rents, they don't put in, these numbers are a little bit construed. Or manipulated, if you will. So let's just say it's 10%, and let's just say we experienced 10% of. Well, let's just go off last year's numbers. 7%, and let's just say we experience that for the next 10 years. Well, let's just say then I think last time I saw Redfin's predictions was that we appreciate about 2 to 3%, for some time to come. So still appreciation, but 2 to 3%, more of a natural real estate market, right? Which is about 3 or 4%.
What's their time frame for that?
The article that I read didn't. I mean, it was that we'd start adjusting in that in 2022, but then it was just for years to come. It wasn't like and I could be wrong on that, but I don't really pay attention to Redfin's data too much. So let's just say that appreciation is 2%, right? In real estate. So you got inflation happening, and the real estate market is still going up at 2%, right? And let's just say that those both take place for the next 10 years. Which if we do a repeat of what happened in the 1970s. We could experience a decade of inflation. Inflation is a very difficult beast to go out there and tame. And one thing that we know about all central banks and really all governments out there is they'll do anything they can to fight off a deflationary depression like we saw which was the Great Depression, right? Depressionary period, because our monetary system, all of our modern day monetary systems are built off of inflation. It's a debt-based system. So if you go into a deflationary, depression or deflationary long enough period, that means it wrecks the whole, so they're going to they will do everything they can to avoid that. They'd rather have, higher inflation all day long than, a long deflationary period. Right. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't think a lot of people appreciate like the function of a bank is to lend money and collect interest payments on that money. It's to create debt. It's not to just hold. Like they don't want you to pay off the car loan because it doesn't do them any good. They want that monthly interest on it to keep accumulating.
Yeah, I mean, just go out there and study. You can go out there and read, Federal Reserve money mechanics. You could, just go out there and study the fractional banking system and our they're all fiat systems are based off of debt, right? So, okay, so you got 7% inflation. So you want to call, so CPI inflation year over year for 10 years. You got 2% of real estate appreciation for 10 years. So both are going up. Over that 10-year period, though, that's a 50% correction in the real estate market. So if you look at when you look at this, both, you could have consumer inflation going up, real estate appreciation going up, but still, a significant correction in housing prices. So, our next correction could, very well be, a scenario of that. But either way, here's the thing is we can speculate all day. I look at speculation as mental masturbation, right? And don't get me wrong. Like I go out there and I try to do my due diligence to get my best assessment to just see where things are heading, to how to be prepared. And I will kind of scenario plan in my head. So I have those plans, but what are you and your team doing to, prepare for, whatever's to come? I mean, how do you shift with the markets? What are you guys doing right now, even currently, to kind of shift with the market to continue, to sustain the growth that you are?
That's a great question. So I think number one is this just strategic alliances. So we have always, I don't know if it was just from doing so much REO, but I got burned out on the list side. I mean, I sold 11,000 properties dealing with all these, jumping through hoops all day, every day. So I didn't really want to work with sellers and we focused our business on buyers, and we continue to focus our business on buyers because it's the one thing that I see as that constant. Because if the market crashes, the people who don't have the REO accounts are not getting listings. And they just cannot, a traditional listing cannot compete with an REO listing in that environment unless the property is incredibly unique or desirable. But buyers can always compete. Right. And so now back in 2008, when the market crashed, we didn't have companies like Home Partners or Trios or these investors that will buy the property, rent them back, or give you an option to purchase. Like Home Partners is not the only rent to own. They're just one of the biggest ones. Right. But they're geared towards a recession. And when that happens, they want to continue to buy homes. So I think that strategic partnership is that we focus on, do we have a big institutional investor that we're working with? Do we have local private investors? And do we have a solid plan to continue cultivating our buyer pool? Because if we do, I think the one thing, it seems like the lenders, at least in our area, have been very good about adjusting to the market, where you start getting, they were recognizing that their finance buyers were losing deals because they had exorbitant closing costs, or it was going to take too long to close, or like the timelines were too spread out. And locally, they made a lot of adjustments where they can close faster. We can lower the fees. Like they've made these adjustments to make a financed offer more competitive against these cash offers. So for me, I like that strategy where I always want to have buyers. If the market crashes, I want to have investors that are going to go in and swoop everything up. If the market doesn't crash, I want to have buyers that, like 80% of our business, 85% of our business is buyers, because we like having that control. Like, whenever we talk to a seller with a listing presentation, it's always, it doesn't matter what you think the property is. It doesn't matter what I think the property is worth. The market will tell us what it's worth. Because this, whenever we do a CMA, you never use an active comparable as a comp. You use it to show you what the competition is, but you never use it to support value, because it's just theoretical. Until a buyer comes and buys that property, it's theoretical. So that's where we focus our business, because without a buyer, real estate can't happen, right? So we continue to focus our business on that. And what we're doing to prepare for it is, I firmly believe that in the future, the next year or two, automation wins. And I think agents who are not automated, agents who aren't taking advantage of software tools, technology, strategies that automates their processes, are going to lose. And we saw that first happen when, like drip campaigns. How long have drip campaigns been out? Like that was a revolutionary thing, that somebody could come in and go on an email drip campaign. And all of a sudden we have technology where we can do an email and a text drip campaign. And now we can also fire off tasks for you. And the agents that don't have that automation set up are missing out on cultivating cold leads. And I think it's going to take a step further. So, I'm huge with video ask. That's what we're doing to build up, is to say the number one search engine is Google. The number two search engine is YouTube, right? So we're saying I think every agent has to have that presence on YouTube, because that's where people are going. I went there to look how to change the battery in my key fob the other day. I went to YouTube. I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm looking at somebody pop a screwdriver in there. That's our strategy, is saying we've done a good job of cultivating the rent to purchase market. We're going to continue to do that. Of course, we have our sphere that we work, but we're pretty, like, if I'm being candid with you, we're pretty lax on how we work our sphere. We send out Boomerang. I know a lot of people in the group ask about the best mailer. We found that Boomerang is it. It sends out like a buy one, get one free coupon to our whole sphere once a month. But that's all we do for our past clients, outside of being friends with them as we would in normal life. But we're gearing towards that shift in automation and basically marketing in a social media context, because they just want everybody, they only care about themselves. Like, it's all about me, what's in it for me, marketing to me, and I want my information right now. And I think the person that wins is the one that can give the information automatically. So that's how our business is shifting, is the YouTube channels, more presence on Facebook, but all of our business is automated through video asks. So we can bring somebody in and answer their questions personally. Because I think that's one of the biggest changes. I mean, look what COVID did with Zoom. Like, before, a Zoom call was completely abnormal, and now it's expected. Like talking to somebody like this is completely normal. And if you and I had never met, and then we went and met in person, we would be friends because we had this call together and we know each other. That's what COVID set up, was like, we don't have to meet in person for us to do a personal thing. And I know, like, Nalika, her business is pretty much all through Zoom presentations. So she doesn't even have to be there to do her presentations and the setup. I think that's the future for real estate. So that's what we're focused on, is how do we automate as much of our process as we can without losing the personal touch, and continue focusing on buyers. That's what we're going to do. Continue focusing on buyers, take the sellers when they come. But
You know what's kind of a mind fuck, dude, is in 5 years, this technology right here will be like old school, outdated. I'll be the metaverse.
it'll be like a 3D image walking through a house, touring somebody.
Yeah. Have you been looking in the metaverse, dude?
Yes, a little bit, just a
Yeah.
little bit. We haven't really jumped all into it, but you know what I did the other day was I filmed, I bought a GoPro Max that does the 360-degree view. And I drove around with my kids and did a 360 film, uploaded it to YouTube, and then put on the Oculus.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, you've got to be kidding. I'm watching like my kids, like I'm watching them in 3D. I think that's what, dude. I'm glad you mentioned Meta, because I want to know more about it. I don't know. I've got Caleb here in my office that's always talking about buying virtual real estate and hanging up, you know, the arts and stuff. And I haven't jumped down that rabbit hole yet.
Yeah.
But it's the future. We have to be online and connected like this. 3D Matterport, all that stuff. Like, what is it? I don't know if it's Open Door. I think it's Open Door. That their whole strategy is that to see a property, one of theirs, it might be, yeah, I think it's Open Door. You just have to show an ID to the camera and they'll unlock the doors for you. So now you can go tour a vacant property on your own. Like, how far away are we from that with super boxes where we could give remote access to somebody?
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's, you know, Open Door was the first, at least that I saw that technology. And again, my market is for whatever reason, all these institutions, you know, chose Phoenix as their sandbox. And it's cool because I get to see all the technology before, you know, years before the rest of the world gets to see it. But yeah, I mean, their system, like you sign up, you get essentially you get an electronic key that you can download, you know, through your phone. And then you go, like, they have their own lockbox system. They have their own cameras in the house. It's a self-shutting door. So when people are done looking at that house, they just leave and it's all tracked and secure. And so essentially, I mean, that eliminates, at least on their own properties, which they own a shit ton out here, it eliminates a need for a showing agent.
Right.
You know, and yeah, I mean, it's crazy stuff where the world is going, dude. And, you know, with the metaverse, I've just been more studying it because, you know, my kids, one of my sons has the Oculus, and as I saw learn more and more about the metaverse, I'm like, you know, I just started doing due diligence to see, you know, like what the fuck's happening? What are my kids doing in there? You know, right? And what's, you know, so like to the point where like I'm you know, we're getting ready to move here in the next few months and gonna go you know, buy a farm off the grid somewhere. And I'm like, dude, all that shit's going in the trash. It's not making it on the moving truck. So enjoy it while you can. Now I'll leverage that for business, but I don't. It's kind of like Steve Jobs when he invented the iPhone and the iPad. Like, he never let his kids use it. Yeah, right. I don't think it's a good, healthy thing, but I can't stop where it's going. So, you know, but when it comes to automation, dude, because I know I know your business really well. And I think that this is a really important piece for everybody that's watching or listening to this to really understand when you talk about automation, you know, because automation is like all things, dude, it's a double-edged sword. You know, it's like a gun can be used for good, a gun can be used for bad, you know, right? So most tap into automation. They don't customize it. They don't really learn how to leverage it in their niche and then enhance that and better it for the consumer. So, you know, most will be like, okay, let me just go, I don't know, do some video, email, whatever, and upload template campaigns. And they want to take the easiest route possible, which is not what you do. Like, I've seen your video ask campaigns and like, you're very niche down. You know what your you know, that your clients, potential clients, like smart marketers will know the conversation that's taking place in their potential clients' minds, right? So you take the time to get to know, okay, what are the questions that they're having? And let's create very specific, catered, automated content for the consumer that we serve. And you put a lot of time in there, but yeah, you're able to automate it to go out there and do more with less and so forth. But you're not, like you mentioned, drips. How many people and agents do we know and that we see that just go get some CRM, flip on the drips that they have, don't customize them, you know, right? Like, though, and I'm not saying that some of that, you know, you can't still, that's better than doing nothing, you know, but you don't want to go out there and generalize this stuff either. You know, an example of this is the other day, I go onto this new business that I wanted to do business with, and I was going to switch a couple of my other accounts to this business. And this was about a $40,000 yearly, like year over year, 40 grand, like these people would get from me, right? But I go on there, I can't get the questions answered from their answer-based Q&A. There's no phone number for me to call in. They bring up their damn little AI chat bot that's on there. It still can't answer my questions. After 20 minutes of going through that and not being able to get the answers and even get a human being that I can just have a conversation with to make sure that I want to make this switch. Because if it was the wrong move and they couldn't, like, I needed to have that certainty, otherwise it would disrupt my businesses. After 12, I was just like, fuck you guys, dude. You just lost 40 grand a year for, even if they would have been superior. I was so pissed off, so there can be that negative experience with automation too. So, what are some advices or, advice that you have or things that you're doing to, make sure that the automation is enhancing the experience, not creating more frustration? Because people are still human beings. They want to be heard. So automation could be very dangerous too.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I look at it as everything that we do, like you said, it's intentional and it's niche down because we're looking at the consumer experience. And so one, I think first you have to complete your customer avatar. If you haven't already done that, who's your client? But you have to ask yourself the question of, why on earth should they continue having a conversation with me? That's what I look at. Like, if I'm recruiting, why on earth would somebody want to work with me? What can I offer them? What questions are they going to have and how can I serve them? But with the automation standpoint, I agree with you 100%. And I'm totally guilty of it. Like, once I saw that you published the email drips in Perfect Storm, I was like, okay, Josh made these, just go turn them on. And I was good. And they were off and gone. The templates that I do through Video Ask really won't work in that aspect, because the whole intention I'm trying to do is, okay, like I told you, I work buyers primarily. Well, we know that 70% of buyers work with the first agent they meet, and that may be with listing agents too, but 70% of people work with the first person they meet. So I need to meet them. So I have to provide value. And once I provide value, I have to continue providing value until I've given them enough and built the relationship enough that I can ask them for something that I want. And I think most people go into automation saying it's all about me. Right? Like, they're saying, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to have you, like, they're asking a client or a potential client to do something for them when they should be asking, what can I do for you? How can I serve you? How can I get you information? How can I help you? And I hope I'm not going off on a tangent. I feel like I was going off a little bit there. When I do the videos, I had this epiphany the other day where I was looking at, like, YouTube is fantastic. If people are using BombBomb video, it's at least a start, but BombBomb is still a one-way conversation, and YouTube is a one-way conversation where you're telling somebody something. They can't really interact unless they continue on their own path. And I was thinking there was a lot like I love chicken. Every time I come to see you, I'm either getting fish tacos somewhere or else I'm getting Raising Cane's. Like, those are my two go-tos every time, because we don't have Raising Cane's here, but we do have Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday. A lot of what people are doing to generate business is basically what Chick-fil-A does on Sunday. They're advertising commercials, getting people excited for a product or for a service they can't get access to. So it doesn't matter how hungry you are for Chick-fil-A after seeing their commercial, the minute you drive to their location, they are closed Sunday. So you're not going to turn around and go home and make something. You're going to look at their competitors, and you're going to go to a Zaxby's or to a Raising Cane's or whatever. You're going to go somewhere else that can serve your need. The majority of what I think real estate agents are doing right now is they are advertising to a closed location. They're saying, here's your homes list. I'd love to send this to you. Give me your contact information. I'll send it out to you. Or you want to learn more about joining my team. You want to learn more about my buying process. Great. Go ahead and fill out my contact form and I'll call you back. Dude, that person has bounced and they've gone and found somebody that can offer them something right away. So when I set up my automation, you're right, it is completely personal, but it's looking and saying, okay, that person that's looking to buy, how can I deliver a complete buyer's presentation through Video Ask automatically so that I provide them all the information they need, so that when I ask them to schedule time with me, I've earned the right to ask them to wait for me to call them back the next day or something like that. So I don't know if that doesn't feel like I was really solid in answering that, but I hope that helps, and that it is all tailored towards, I go into everything with saying how really it's why on earth should someone continue, like why should they click the next button? And I always work it backwards from there. If I know my outcome, I got a new buyer, or let's say I'm recruiting somebody, an agent. I want this agent to book an appointment with me. Well, if I need them to book an appointment with me, I have to go backwards from that. Why on earth would they want to? Well, they have to know at some point that we're going to be a good fit, and I'm going to give them the training they need, the support they need, strategies they need, and they're going to make the money they want to. Well, how do I do that? and I back up another step and say, okay, well, now I have to deliver this information by asking questions to find out what's most important to them. That's how I go through it, is I map out based off the outcome and then focus on the person I'm talking to. Very niche.
And just because I've seen you build these out, and I've seen, you know, another layer to that is like you're not guessing what their questions will be. Like you're going out there, okay, hey, let me do these live via phone calls for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Because so many people are going to only ask the same amount of questions over, you know, right? To you know, at some point, it's like, okay, well, here are the 12 questions that everybody over time asks, you know, right? And then you're going out there and creating that content around there, where then they don't have to wait on getting on the phone with you to answer that question, but you know what those questions are, so you're not adding that added frustration element to the process.
Yeah, Kim likes to talk about letting people win, like get some wins when you're talking to them. Because like if you and I are face to face and we're trying to sell, we know that our behavior is that we ask a question that we want a yes to, we nod our head a little bit and we get them to agree. Well, video allows us to do that, but we can also give them some wins up front. So when Kim talks to somebody about like the rent to purchase program, we understand that our mentality, the mentality of the person that we're targeting, they may have some dings on their credit. They may have a past bankruptcy. They may have a past felony, and they've been turned down before. So that's a pain point for them. So we make it a point to say, you know, do you have any open bankruptcies or pre-existing bankruptcies? And if they say, yeah, I have, our first response is, hey, that's okay. This is a life happens program that happens to a lot of people. You'll still qualify for this program as long as A, B, and C. So we give them that win to say, look, instead of shutting you down, we're going to give you a win here. And there's a thing that I like, and this is why I'm a video ask guy. So I'm always going to pitch a video ask over something else. But I've got this thing that I've been working on that's my funnel theory. And the theory is basically this, that if I can't get you to answer the first question, I can't get you to answer the third question. So it doesn't matter. For me, when I'm building a funnel, I never build a 19-step funnel right off the bat. I build a 1, 2, or 3-step funnel. Because if I can't get you to click, if I can't get you to watch one video and click on the next one, it doesn't matter if I'm giving you gold after that. Like I could be giving away $1 million on video too. If I can't get you there, it doesn't even matter. And video ask actually gives you the ability. I think that you have to go into it. I don't think enough people spend time in the analytics. I know you do. And I know there's a lot of people that do look at the numbers, but I think too many people are scared by them. But video ask has it very simple, where I can actually look at each video. I can look at each video step and I can say how many people clicked on it, how many people watched 75% of it, how many people went to the next video. So if I do it in small chunks, because I get it, when people look at mine, like Curtis Johnson said this, when people look at my video ask stuff, they're like, it's too much. I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to build such a big funnel. And so I've been building out like base funnels, the 10 most basic funnels everybody needs that are 1 or 2 step funnels. But the whole point in that is that video ask lets me analyze how many people watched that video and how many people took action. So I can fix a broken video before I add that second step, right? So like Chris Igo, we know Chris, if you go to his YouTube, any of his YouTube channels, and that's where all his business is coming from. And he set up a very simple next step funnel where somebody clicks on learn more about available properties. It's a video of him and it's just a 1-step funnel. All it is him introducing himself, thanking him for being there, and say, do you want me to just send you some homes, or would you like to schedule time to meet with me? Like that's all his funnel is. And then it takes them off to either a search or book a time with Calendly. Super simple. Once he starts getting good traction through that, he can then add another step to it and then another step. And that's how I do it. I just tend to do it faster because like you said, we have the experience and we know the conversations and we've already gone through. Like with the home partners, we've had thousands of conversations. We know what people are asking. We know what wins they need. But you can speed up time by just doing 1, 2-step funnels and then rocking and rolling. Like so many people, and I'm guilty of this too. I've had ideas for YouTube forever and I'm stuck in this paralysis by analysis where I'm like, no, I need to go create my first 8 videos. Well, I'm being an ass there because really, if I can't get somebody to watch the first video, does it matter that I have 7 more? That's just 7 more they're not going to watch. It's just taking a ton of energy. But we're so afraid of messing up that we just don't make anything. And I think that that's not really part of this, but by going through that funnel theory, it gives you permission to just fail. Because all you're trying to do is, it's like fishing. You're just trying to get somebody to bite. So cast a ton of bait. And once somebody bites, and then I add on to that.
Yep.
One thing I was going to mention with you moving off grid, we hadn't even talked about it, but you opened up a big section of the market that how many people are moving out of places like Phoenix or California or San Francisco because they can
Yeah.
be remote now. Like you don't have to be in a brick and mortar anymore.
Well, it was a conversation I was just having with, I mean, both of us know her really well, Kara Henshaw, who's just a beast. And, I was talking with her just this last week, and I was like, dude, I think the next big move that we'll see in the next 12 to 24 months is we saw a lot of people moving from specific, cities or even states to, less restrictive cities and states. Let's just say California to Texas or to Arizona or Utah or, Tennessee, wherever. We saw we saw that shift. Then we saw a lot of shift of cities, people that were living in the cities in any city, to more suburban and rural as well. But the suburbs just blew up. I think the next shift is going to be, still people from the cities, but also a lot of people from the suburbs. They're like, fuck this. This is, I thought that the suburbs were the answer, but this isn't the answer. Because dude, like you go into supply, and I don't want to play this whole chicken little sky is falling, but these are just conversations that everybody needs to have with themselves and do your own due diligence on this stuff, but it's like, I've been studying, okay, with other civilizations, and not just here in the US, but like anywhere, going out there, at what point does with inflation, at what point does civil unrest begin, at some point, dude, when people are, I mean, what's the saying, like 9 meals away from, chaos. So when people start, like, what do you think they're going to, like, people in these cities that, because I heard that, food supply with just in time, supply is like, they have like 3 days worth of supply inside the cities of food, okay, well, all of a sudden they don't have food. Okay, well, they're going to go get food somewhere. And we're already seeing this in, like I've been seeing stories. I don't know if this is an abundance of this, but there's already, scenarios of this taking place of people scoping out and following people like out of the grocery store and robbing them for the groceries. And, there's certain, urban environments where that stuff's already taking place. So, and whether it may not just be from a civil unrest, I analyze from all of this. I'm making this move. I've been wanting to do this for years, even before all this shit part of it is definitely that. Don't get me wrong. All this shit weighs on me. And then just what I see, like we're talking about the metaverse and just how kids are growing up out here. I'm like, dude, I don't like this. My kids have had the first, half of their childhood in this environment. Now let's go out in the country, and instead of jumping at, my kids playing video games, let's go build some fucking tree houses together. Let's go set up, create some, dirt jumps and go, ride our BMX bikes and have our, like just have our own property. We can hunt, shoot, do whatever we want to do on our own land, and, get them to learn how to garden and, all of those things. And I live such a busy life with business that I'm 40 now. Like I'm ready for things to be calm in my personal life. Even now, like every time we have a weekend off or, have time off, like I'm up in the mountains, I'm getting the hell out of the city. I don't do anything in the city. I just fucking live here. And I'm like, now I'm in the, suburbs of the city, but it's like, I don't want to do anything in my town on my days off. And I don't need to be here now for business. But yeah, I truly believe that you'll see, now this is just a guess of mine, but I think that you're going to see this rural expansion of people moving to more rural areas. So, and while I was having that conversation with her, is she lives in one of those areas. I'm like, dude, you should be creating so much content and targeting, because a lot of people, like she lives in this beautiful area in Southern Indiana that people just don't necessarily have this awareness of, and I'm like, dude, if I'm in a rural market like that, I am blasting that. Like because if people don't have awareness that you exist, like create that awareness, dude. And, these are the conversations that I'm having with people in my circle, if you will. I mean, they all have the same plans. They're getting the hell out of, the suburbs, getting the hell out of the cities. They're buying at least, at least 2 to 3 acres, if not, more acreage, and I don't know if I'm going to go to the extreme homesteading, but it may, turn into that. But, I definitely want to have my, 10 to 20, maybe even more acreage than that, and, be fully self-sufficient.
Yeah. And I see that as you hit it right on the head. I think that because outside of it, had you not grown up and understood what rural was available, it would basically just be, I'm going somewhere with land. And you're 100% right that it's a good time for rural agents to take advantage of that, because you're saying, if you're going to go somewhere, come here. And I know I have a friend who has been my friend since I was 19 years old. He and his wife had been married for like 20 years, but they decided to wait and have kids late in life. So in their 40s, they're going to start having kids, and they have one and they're going to have a second one. Well, she's a nurse, and at the hospital, they're making it a requirement that she gets a COVID vaccination. and she's not going to do it because she's already at high risk for this next baby they're going to have. And he's told me, he's like, we're fighting it. We're talking to her reps and we're looking at attorneys and things. But if we can't win, I'm selling my house, taking the equity. I'm going to Oklahoma. I'm buying the biggest place I can for $100,000 and we're just going to live there. Right. He's like, I'm going to go somewhere where they're not going to make this a mandatory thing. We don't know yet how that's going to impact, because like you and I were talking earlier before we jumped on about getting all the information you have. And I've never been one that, I made money when Obama was president. I made money when Trump was president. I've been making money with Biden as president. Like, as long as I can sell houses. But the minute that, for me, my personal opinion is anti-vaccination for the COVID. It just hasn't been proved. I could be wrong. So I have to make a decision. If they required vaccinations for my kids to go to school, it would be, see you later, Utah. I'm going to go somewhere where they don't. That's how I affect change. So there's got to be a class that people are looking at that, maybe even from an opposite. Maybe some people are walking around terrified that nobody's wearing masks. And so they're like, you know what, I'm going to a state where they take this seriously and they make you wear masks and they mandate vaccines. And that's where I'm going because I feel safe there. Well, we have the option to do that now because you can do so much work virtually, constantly. Yep. That's going to be a big impact. And I think we're going to see it in California first. San Francisco is just going to.
Well, yeah. And for those that are like, oh, COVID's almost, like, I keep seeing this in the news of like, oh, Omicron and it's almost done and finally be living back to normal. And I hope to God that's the case. But I highly doubt that will be the case. It is going to, I mean, you're already seeing the rhetoric of, well, just in case for the next variant that's more severe, and then I look at, you look at, our government, we just did a big deal with Germany. Now this is a several $100 million deal where we're building a plant to go out there. And so we can get to build our COVID test kits, right? Well, this is going to be, it's 2 years to go out there and build that plant. So if that plant's not done until, mid to late 2024, and they're building a test plant so we can have more control to get tests faster. And don't get me wrong, the government, I'm sure, makes a lot of bad investment decisions. So it could just be a bad investment, but it also could be that they're planning on this baby here for years to come and, and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, it's, to your point, dude, it's this whole movement migration. I love the quote from Jim Rohn of, people, and I'm laying some context before the quote, but it's, I can't remember his exact words, but it was like, people sit there and like talk about birds and how amazing it would be to be a bird because you could just get out there and fly and move and go wherever you want to go. And he's like, like, what are you, a tree? He goes, you ain't a tree. Get up and move. You're like, if we could jump on a plane, but then from there, are people willing to make those sacrifices? Are they willing to make those moves? Are they willing to, I'm willing to give up everything I've been building for, 18 years. Now, luckily my businesses can stay and I don't need, so I don't have to, work can sustain, but outside of work, life, community, friends, all, built a life here outside of that and, giving up all of that to go live in the middle of nowhere, but I'm willing to go through those sacrifices and change those sacrifices of life. And I'm not, again, for me, I'm not doing it just because I'm a hope for the best, plan for the worst. So I'm like, okay, what's worst case scenario of how this could all go out? And let's just say we're George Orwell's 1984, which, I think it'll probably be more like a Brave New World, right. With the introduction of the metaverse versus the 1984, but, still kind of same, concept of tyranny and we're already making the moves to totalitarianism. But that could be worst case. But even if it's not, I'm like, I was having a conversation with my brother about this the other day, and I'm just like, dude, if none of this was taking place, or none of this stuff ever happened, even if it wasn't a worst case scenario, and I hope to God none of that happens. But again, in business, I just apply my personal life now, do my business. If I hope for the best, plan for the worst. But I'm talking to my brother and I'm like, dude, I just believe that even if none of this was taking place, everything was, truly normal. I believe it's a better place for not just me, but our kids to have these experiences as kids. I don't think it's healthy for kids to be on their fucking video games 3 hours a day.
I don't either.
Whatever, and going out there and, doing shit and learning other skill sets, other trades. I don't think it's a bad idea for my kids to learn how to go out there and freaking, grow their own food and to be self-sustained and, go out there and hunt. And, those are life skills that they may need, especially we're talking off air. If if governments and people are serious about getting off of fossil fuels with the timeline that they have, we are going to have to, like, this doesn't exist in the way that we have life right now, meaning
9 iPads
that,
plugged in and
people don't realize, like, I know you have a Tesla, but it's like, people with electric cars is like, where do you think that electricity comes from?
right.
Right. It's like, okay, if we're going to get off coal, if we're going to get off fossil fuels, if we're going to get off all of this, like that kind of shit, unless they figure out something and we somehow, get massively into nuclear energy. I don't know how we don't fast or rewind society, 75 years, to go to a sustained energy source. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right. I don't think the modern society and the growth and, what we're doing to the environment, whether you're a climate change believer or not, like I'm not sold on the whole climate change as far as carbon emissions. I've done a lot of research on this and study on this. And, if you look at greenhouses, for example, I mean, you're looking at, 1,000, BTUs, if you will, of when you look at how carbon dioxide is measured versus, we're at like 400 and some right now. In pre-industrial revolution, what we were at 175 or whatever, but there are certain scientists that argue in that debate that we are with the higher carbon emissions today, it's healthier for the planet and greenery to thrive. And so, but whether you believe it, like I drive around my city, dude, I see more fucking trash and more like just I see trash everywhere. I see masks everywhere. I see, like, I'm just like, okay, like all this overall can't be good, and I don't want to freaking look at it, right? Like I don't want to drive down freeways and see freaking trash everywhere. And, I don't want to sound like I'm unempathetic, but I don't want to drive around and see homeless tents all over and all of this shit. And, if we go that path, so again, it's not just, it's developing those skill sets just in case, plus bring us back closer as a family. Like I'm not doing any Wi-Fi, dude. It's all going to be, we'll still have, internet, but through fiber optics, all hardwired in, I've been doing a lot of research on EMF damage and so forth. So I'm like, just getting rid of all smartphones as a family. Like it'll be a gnarly ride, dude. But I think, either we'll come closer together, be a great experience, or I will traumatize my kids and they will fucking hate me for life, dude. We'll see how it goes. But at some point we gotta make those decisions as parents, and I feel it's the best thing.
But look back at your childhood. Like I look back at mine, and my kids now are to the point where they're making me feel old, where they're like, wait a minute, you couldn't just record something to watch? And it's like, no, dude, if you missed it on TV, it was gone forever. You were hoping for a rerun someday. But then I think, I spent all my time in the summer in the Goalie riding my bike and damming up the river that was coming down through it. And you had to leave notes because you didn't have a phone where you were at. And I'm the same way. I walk in, I look, and my kids have friends over and they're all on their iPads playing Fortnite or Roblox or something together. And we've lost that connection and that interaction. And it's scary. I don't want to be that. I always made fun of my dad for being back in my day, we did this and this and this, but I really look at it and say, dude, they were simpler times, but it was more enjoyable. I had like 5 channels because we didn't have cables. So I had a couple channels I could choose from. And it blows my son away that I didn't have a remote control to change the TV. And now we can control everything from a smartphone. In my house, we've got Apple Watches, iPads, our laptops are set up. Every TV is a smart TV. And I'm with you. Not only are we draining energy, but it's also, I don't know if you've ran into it, but one of the most dangerous things for me is to find a series that I like. Because now I don't have to wait once a week to watch it. I can sit down and watch 75 episodes all at once. Yeah. Like there's almost too much, right?
Yeah. My wife and I, like a weekend, like last weekend, like we binged Dexter season 2 in like a day.
Yeah.
I was like,
love Dexter. Yeah. Yep.
And I had that same conversation with them. Like I missed the times where you could only watch 1 episode a week because it forced you to stop.
It forced it. Yeah. Because now we just you could live your whole life inside, never moving. And that's a scary thought, but
yeah, one of my mentors told me a long time ago, he's like, look, just because just because this is what's taking place in the world doesn't mean that has to be your world, and it's what I always look at. It's like, look, I don't want to say, the shifts and changes that we're going to is good or bad. I just don't want to participate, now I'm still going to do business and who knows, I don't know, I might have another, part of me is on that mindset of and when I say business, I mean, most of my businesses are reliant without me being involved because I've got great leadership teams and I could disappear for 10 years. And like my real estate team, Ashley's CEO, she runs that show. It grows without me. I'm talking about, particularly like the things I'm involved in, like the coaching program and so forth. And, I think I got another probably 2 years before I'll make this decision, so because I still love it and enjoy it. But at some point I see myself in the next, 2 to 5 years, you just being done with all of it and just going out there and doing my own thing, dude. And just, focusing on my own investments and, so forth. But yeah, I think we're still blessed and lucky enough to be able to go out there and make those decisions where we can move and we can shift and we can, but what does freak me out, dude, is, and I was talking to this off air before we jumped in, is there's a couple of things that I am seeing that is freaking me the fuck out right now. Without going down the rabbit hole, but it's, in my lifetime, I've never seen, from on a global standpoint, everybody of all, meaning all these leaders of all these countries unilaterally, for the most part, doing the same moves. And they're not all like, okay, Australia, like, holy shit, I feel so bad for people living in Australia. But we're seeing that here in the United States. I don't know if you saw, like, I just saw it last night. It was just released. It just happened in the last 24, 48 hours. But like that kid that got arrested in our family, and the kid, I don't have all the context of it. I just saw a video of it. But was going into a museum in New York City, and they got, cops were there pulling them out. They didn't have their vaccine passports and getting arrested for that, dude. It's, there's parts of our country where this stuff holds true, but what I never thought and I was just naive and ignorant to it, I guess. But you hear about the censorship that takes place in China and so forth. I thought like, oh, that would never happen in the United States. Until I started, doing a lot of due diligence, and I'm not even talking about COVID-19, just due diligence on a lot of other stuff, and realizing how much censorship a Google has or YouTube has. Then I started having to, now I told you before we hit the record button that, dude, like I have to use DuckDuckGo. Like I don't even trust Google anymore, and then, I don't know if did you hear the other day, dude, that little girl from Alexa, she was speaking to Alexa and asked Alexa for a challenge, and Alexa gave her instructions to electrocute herself.
No.
Yeah, dude. So then I'm like, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and and luckily the parents, like, she went and asked her mom about her, so, whatever. Right. So luckily she didn't do it. And Amazon's taking responsibility, and they're trying to figure out how that happens, whatever. But I'm like, that's scary shit, dude. Like, all these people think like, oh, AI is great stuff, dude. The AI, like, I'm not a fan of any component of it. I think it's going to bring so many negatives, and very little advantages that, but it's got this compounding momentum that it's going to be there and it's coming to place. But you go like to cities like Tempe here, like you got robots delivering everything. You got, you got Flippy now flipping burgers and pizzas to eliminate those workers. You got robots, even like room service at hotels that are driving up. So like city of Tempe, like you can order things, the robots carry it out to you, and, going to gas stations now. And it's like, there's no attendant. The first time I walked into the gas station, one of the gas stations, I switched to the system. I'm like, where's the person to pay? And somebody else was like, oh, your first time here, let me show you. It had to show me how to put all the things on the tray, spread it apart, but it scans it, weighs it, takes the inventory. I put it in the cart. I'm like, there's really nobody working here at this gas station. I'm like, to me, I was just like, it was a mind fuck, but like all when you speak to automation, I get it that we need to, I guess, embrace it at some point in our business, because otherwise you can be obsolete. But it is that double-edged sword of, in certain industries, it's going to wipe out these workers. Well, what do they do? Where do they go? But then, is AI perfect? Now I'm seeing like China has all these AI, robots with, military robots at their border now, and just crazy ass shit. Dude.
Well, Stephen Hawkins had said that the number one threat to humanity was AI.
Yeah.
Before he had died, he said that's the thing that scared him the most. And it seems like Elon Musk is on the same pain, which is funny because he's created the AI car, which, driving a Tesla, you realize how far away we are from being totally autonomous.
Well, and think about this, dude. Like, I've went away from all the smart devices, like inside my house, inside everything. But you have beds now that like measure your heart rate, measure your sleep cycles, measure everything, measure, like it won't be too long, dude, before all of that speaks to each other in such a way where like your insurance company knows, and I was watching a podcast not too long ago about somebody that was talking about that he had one of those, what do you call them? Those AFAB machines that you breathe with at night. And she got a call from his insurance company saying, oh, we see that you're not utilizing the machinery. And he's like, how do you fucking know that? How are you calling me? Yeah. Like, well, dude, it's all online. All the data is reported to us. So, like they're going to, it won't be too long before, like, how is this data exchanged? Right. Like, do they know when you go into the grocery store and then you enter in your code to get a little discount on your food and they know every item that you buy, like, is that reported to whom? And I'm not saying that that's the point that it is, fully at yet, but eventually, like they're going to know every little thing about you. And I don't know. I like my privacy, dude. Like, I don't want to have, the worry of somebody, like and again, I heard this on somebody else having a conversation about this. They're like, okay, if you look at like North Korea and they were like, okay, we want you to put this in your device in your room. That's going to listen to everything that you say. But then that you can speak to it and it will give you answers to questions that you have, and you can, speak to it to get like, okay, well, communist country, like you'd be like, okay, that's too much censorship. That's, 1984 with the TV monitoring, right. Well, here in the US, it's like, oh no, that's just handled through Amazon, right. It's an Alexa device. So it's okay. Well, I don't know who control, like where's the data go? Where is it? I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard the other day that, DARPA was, kind of co-created Siri with Apple. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. I didn't spend the time to go fact check it or whatever, but it wouldn't surprise me, so it's like all of the, and then you go, dude, I don't know if you ever went out there and read the terms and conditions, like when you're like sign, like Instagram or Facebook. But it's like, dude, like they have the permission to listen to like anything, and not just yours. They can, within a certain parameter, access any device, any friend's devices within that parameter. So I and I know I'm sounding like a freaking crazy person here, but I'm like, I just, and even if it's not, people listening and making decisions, I'm just like, dude, like I want my fucking privacy. I don't want to be, like, so for me, I just took all that shit away. And that's why, again, I'm going back to the flip phone here next week but I've got all, like, I don't have to log in. I even removed like my Apple ID. So like, I can't even really do anything on this phone anyway, but other than send a text message and do a phone call, but I don't know. Like I said, I'm just choosing to not participate, at least in my personal life. I mean, some of this stuff, I guess I got to have the internet for business, but outside of that, just, but then, dude, I'll tell you, man, the greatest, like that 6 months, let's just say that I switched to that flip phone, dude, that was like the best 6 months that I've had in the longest fucking time, like just think about like you were sitting out to dinner together and we're actually forced to have a conversation because I can't do this.
Right.
Right. I was just like, dude, like it's just like living again instead of like, this is not fucking, what are we living, watching other people live their lives on a fucking screen? Like, what does that do? No, right. And it's just realizations that like, if we were talking about this 2 years ago, I'd have been like, fuck you, shut up. I'm doing just fine. But now that I've experienced it, I'm like, of just detaching. I'm like, dude, I like every fiber of my being is like, I want and need more of that.
Yeah. And what's funny though, is from a real estate's perspective, it is a total double-edged sword because exactly like you were talking about, everything I do for marketing and all my videos are formatted to reach people on their phone because I know they're always on them. Like one of the first Facebooks I did with you years ago, I came on, you were doing a webinar and I came on just as a guest speaker and just mentioned that little switch of when you're running Facebook ads, always make sure it says only deliver to people when they're on a Wi-Fi network for mobile devices, because it increases your conversions so significantly because they can only connect to a Wi-Fi if there's somewhere that they're sitting down and paying attention. But those are the tricks I use because I want to deliver my message where you are. So if you're on your phone at dinner, I want to give you a message and then give you a way to interact with me later when you can go through the steps or give you the information right there. So it's funny that agents have to embrace technology, but be aware of it. And like, there is a niche for somebody like you, like we're talking about Kira's information out in Southern Indiana, like market to that. That's the thing is we don't have to market to one or the other. I mean, we don't have to be all encompassing. We can pick a lane and say, you know what, I'm going to go with people that want that private farm life. Now start advertising that and find better ways to blow that up. or go to people who are the opposite that want total automation and start automating, start selling homes that are smart homes that have Tesla connections right to them and that are, or they're off the grid or they're using solar panels. Like, we can pick what we want to market to and then do very specific marketing to it. But I love where your head's at, because I think that one challenge I just wanted to, I know this has been a good podcast because we've got a lot of stuff on it, but one of the biggest mistakes agents make is that when we make money, we tend to think it's going to come in forever. So if the market changes, we don't really have options. And that's how a lot of people may not know the REO world, but the majority of asset managers or agents who didn't have a plan for the market to change. It's just a fact. So regardless of what people do, until they get to the point where you're at, where you can get up and leave and say, hey, I'm just going to be gone, like, live below your means so that you don't have that commission breath and you can actually go implement a plan that may take more than 30 days to see fruit, to start bearing some fruit. That's what we did with these videos. Like, Kim basically gave me 2 or 3 months off to just learn how to do video ask and master it. And that's all I did. Like, I haven't taken anybody out to see a home for months. Like, I don't remember the last time I went out. So people eliminate their options too quickly. And we as agents have a tendency to eliminate our options very quickly by just not having the financial resources to get in the business, to maintain our business, and then to grow our business.
Yeah.
So
yeah. What are you doing with your money, dude? Like, because if you're living below your means, but then, like right now, I mean, that's a big question I'm getting, especially from you see it in the coaching group, dude. It's, what do I do with my money? And it's a, hard question to, especially when people are asking me, like, I'm like, I know what I'm doing with mine, but like, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not managing other people's assets. And it's one thing for if I lose money, but if my advice causes somebody else to lose money, that's, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. So we, ours is a balance of stocks for the long-term play, but then also a certain quotient of the money goes towards investing in properties. We still like doing the flips. So we have about 150,000 that's revolving for that's used to pay the 5% down that our hard money guy does, and then that accounts for the repairs so we can have 1 or 2 going if we want to. But also, man, a lot of the money is in our business. It's hiring people that are going to help take our stuff to the next level, especially as we focus on moving out of production and moving more into our training programs. I've probably spent $20,000 on equipment in the last couple months, just setting up the office. And today, all right, I thought I was on Do Not Disturb. Are you there, Josh?
Yeah, I'm here. I just hear it ringing.
I don't know how to kill that here. Sorry.
No, all good, dude. So then are you guys buying any when you're flipping? Are you acquiring any buy and holds with that? Or are you just kind of cap rates not there in your market to make sense to do that?
No, it's really not. We're just going to flips. We've looked at them from a hold standpoint, but I don't know, man. I'm hesitant to be a landlord unless I had more equity into it. But no, we just keep it pretty fluid.
Yeah. What made me nervous about buy and holds, dude, is during the moratorium, I never thought I'd see in my lifetime the government come out and say, as a landlord, you can't collect rents, and
that was scary.
And then you get into that, like, how is that constitutional? How, but then go look at the executive orders that Obama signed in 2012. And then you realize, okay, like, we don't actually own anything here, right? Like, didn't have our property taken anytime. Like, we don't even really own our kids, which is a scary thought. When you start reading through every executive order that's been signed, I mean, really, this goes back to, in the early 2000s, but just seeing the series of executive orders that have been signed, it's like, fuck, dude, like it is freaky. It's scary. Then, even like with the banking collapse and the in-banking system where, now essentially every bank has the permission to, if there's a run on the banks, to hold your not just hold your money, but then utilize those funds to save and bail out the bank. It's a bail in, not a bailout. But that's in the fine print, so, you know, it's like people were asking me, like, I'm like, I don't know if I can know, buried in the backyard. My gold. Actually, like, I don't know what to do with money anymore, dude.
Well, we talk because Caleb's a younger guy in my office, and he's in the crypto space, and he's looking at NFTs and all that stuff. And we sat down the other day and we had a conversation about just what his risk threshold was. And I think that it was good for him, but I think a lot of people don't understand what their threshold is. And we walked through and I said, okay, you've got $11,000 you just invested. If none of that money comes back and it's gone forever, how do you feel? And it's like, oh, I feel like shit. Like, yeah, okay. So $11,000 is not your risk threshold. And we got it down to where it was like a $2,000. Okay, well, that's your super aggressive fund. And then the rest of it would be like long-term holds. I think it's more challenging when you're a business owner and you're looking to expand, because we're constantly thinking, yeah, I could keep this $100,000. And like for me, outside of the Tesla, I don't really have anything flashy. Like even my watch, like my dog, I got a new dog and she chewed through this watch, but I can still wear it. So I won't go spend $100 for a new G-Shock because this one works out just fine. But it's always earmarking that money to go into other ventures, anticipating a return. I mean, that's what we do. But I think people need to look at, I think having it, I'm not a big fan of setting it like mattress money, but if all you did was put it under your mattress and you had enough to go 6 months, 12 months without income, that's going to make a huge difference if and when the market turns.
Yeah.
Huge. So,
yep.
Some of it should be saved.
Yep. 100%, man. Oh, brother. Well, for anybody that's watching or listening to this, dude, that wants to continue following you, or, I mean, I know that we talked about a lot today, we covered a lot of ground, but you do also have, I mean, I don't know, maybe someone that's watching or listening has a referral for you in the Salt Lake City market. Maybe they're in your market and interested in joining your team. We're talking about that. I know that you also have some training programs around video asset. You talked about here with some video funnel training and some things that you have out there that's available for all agents. You also have some training with you and your wife being the number one rent to purchase really agents in the country. We've got some great training around that. And you've actually, coached our team on that and my agents on that. So you got a lot of different amazing resources. Like, where's the best place for people to go learn more about that stuff, get in touch with you, follow you, all of that?
Yeah, I would say any of our programs, go to agenttraininghub.com and then, find us on Facebook, Benjamin Barber. You know what I can do is I can send you over stuff, Josh, so we can just put it in the description.
Okay.
But Agent Training Hub is where we host our programs, and you can always get through because any support emails just go to me or they go to Kim, or even just tag me on this stuff and comment back. So this has been a lot of fun, man.
It's been good, man.
It's been the freedom to go all over the place, but it's fun.
Yeah, well, it's been a minute, dude. And I was like, we always have these interesting conversations. I'm like, let's just fucking hit the record button and go.
Yeah. I love it, man.
All right, you guys. Well, those that are, been here with us, we truly appreciate your support. Keep crushing it. Go dominate, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. See ya.